Hi, fourth grade. We've got math here today. We're going to look at lesson 8-7, more decimal number stories. Our goal today is to solve number stories by converting decimals to fractions. For today's lesson, please watch this entire video and save all of your work because during it, we'll be solving some of the journal problems that are on the Google form assignment for today. Also, towards the end, there will be a picture, call it a mystery picture, if you will. And I'll show it towards the end of this video just to see who's still with me and watching. And if you can see it and then go to today's assignment in the Google Classroom and comment with what was in the picture, who was in the picture, who you saw in it, you could get maybe an extra bonus point or some surprise from your classroom teacher. Up to them. Today, we'll first start by reviewing decimal and fraction equivalencies, just because that will warm your brain up, refresh your brain, and being able to convert between decimals and fractions is something you will need to be able to do in order to solve today's number stories. Then we'll look at solving a perimeter problem with simple decimals. I'll present a few different strategies. Choose the one that works best for you. Solve number stories with decimals, simple decimals is what we'll work on next, and we'll do that by trying number 1 on journal page 292 specifically together. That is the journal page that's on your Google form assignment. So like I said, we'll be doing number 1 together during the video. You just need to then, after the video here, go complete the Math May 20th Google form by entering your answer from number 1 that we did together during the video. And then just independently solve number 2 and 3 on that journal page and enter your answers. Complete your extra math fact practice, check it off the Google form, and click submit on that Math May 20th Google form, and you'll be done your math work for today. So let's start first by looking at the decimal and fraction equivalencies, since we will need to be able to convert fractions to decimals to solve the number stories today. If you look here, we have 5.6, or 5 and 6 tenths. So I could write it as 5 and 6 tenths like this, or I could write it as a mixed number, 5 wholes and 6 tenths. I could write it as an improper fraction, 56 tenths, because 5 wholes, 10 tenths for every whole. 10 times 5 is 50, plus 6 more tenths, 56 tenths. Or I could write it as the number 56 and just the place value word tenths, 56 tenths. Okay, so if we see a decimal and we're having to add decimals, I want us to really remember that we can think of it as 5.6, 5 and 6 tenths as 5 wholes and 6 tenths. And you'll see how that really connects to our number stories in just a few minutes here. We also have here 3.8, 3 and 8 tenths is how I'd read that decimal. Again, we can write it as 3 wholes and 8 tenths. The mixed number, 3 and 8 tenths. Or an improper fraction, 38 tenths. Again, then one final way, 38 and then that place value word tenths. Okay, so I really want you to pay attention to the top two here in terms of seeing the decimal and then thinking of what that means in terms of how many wholes. Say if it's centimeters as a unit, then how many whole centimeters and how many tenths of a centimeter. Okay. All right, now when we look at solving perimeter problems involving decimals, there's a few different strategies that you could use. I'm going to share with you the 4 here and then show you 3 of them that I think probably make the most sense. And like I said, some of the strategies might not make sense to you. Some might make more sense than the others. Ultimately, choose the one that works best for you. So first, you could add, we know when we're looking for perimeter, or that distance, the total distance around the outside of a figure or shape, you could add the widths and add the lengths and then combine those two sums. Or you could add the measures of all of the 4 sides by adding the whole numbers and then the tenths separately. We're assuming that the lengths and the widths are mixed numbers, or like the decimals from the last slide, 5 and 6 tenths and 3 and 8 tenths. So they're saying you could add those whole numbers first and then add the tenths separately. Or a third strategy, which might make more sense to some of us, we might just add the length and the width, and then whatever sum you get from that, add it to itself to count for those other 2 sides. Or what usually works best for me is simply just add the length and the width and then multiply it by 2, double it, because then you would be accounting for the other 2 sides and in turn all 4 sides. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at a problem here. If we were told to find the perimeter of this rectangle, or the total distance around the outside here, we would look and see here. We know with rectangles, opposite sides are equal lengths. So if this side here is 3.8 centimeters, so is this one on the opposite side. If it's 5.6 centimeters here, then down here would be 5.6 centimeters as well. If I use that first strategy, add the widths and add the lengths, and then combine the two sums, what I would do here is think of it as, convert it to a fraction. So 3.8 or 3.8 of a centimeter, that means a whole 3 centimeters plus 8/10 of another centimeter. So I would add the widths, 3.8 plus 3.8. I get 6 16/10. And then I'm going to add the lengths, 5 6/10 plus 5 6/10. 5 plus 5, 10. 6 plus 6, 12. So I get 10 12/10. Then I take both of those sums and I combine them. I can do that by adding the whole numbers first. So 6 plus 10 gives me 16. And then 16/10 plus 12/10, since the denominators are the same, I just add 16 plus 12 and get 28. In other words, 16 plus 28/10 is the same as 16 plus 2. Since tenths, there's 28/10, there's really 2 wholes. So 16 plus 2 is 18, and I have 8/10 left over. So 18 8/10. If I had to write 18 8/10 as a decimal, I would simply write 18.8, because the 8.8 then is in that tenths place value. 18 whole centimeters and 8/10 of another centimeter. Okay, so that's one way to find the perimeter. A second way is that you could just add the length and width and then take that sum and add it to itself. So they looked at 5.6 centimeters and they said, okay, that's equivalent to 5 6/10 centimeters is equivalent to 56/10. 3 8/10 centimeters here is equivalent to 38/10. So they added the length and the width. 56 plus 38 equals 94. Keep the denominator the same. I get a sum of 94/10. Well, then that last step, if I'm using this strategy, would be to add the sum to itself. 94/10 plus 94/10 equals 188/10. The one thing I find with this method that might be a little tricky is that then you have to simplify. So you're left with this improper fraction, 188/10, and I have to simplify it, which is what you see they did here. Eventually finding that when simplified, it was equal to 18 8/10, or 18.8, 18 8/10 centimeters written as a decimal. That's one thing I think with this that might be a little tricky with this strategy. That's usually why I personally tend to go with this one here, where you're just adding the length and the width, and then you multiply it by 2, double it. So 5 6/10 for that 5 6/10 centimeters here, plus 3 8/10. Add that together, add the whole numbers, 5 plus 3, I get 8. 6 plus 8, 14. So I have the mixed number 8 14/10. Now I just need to multiply it by 2. Well, 2 times 8 right here is what I'm going to do, the whole numbers, 2 times 8, and I'll add that to the 2 times 14/10. Well, 2 times 8 I know is 16, and 2 times 14 is 28. Keep the denominator the same, so 16 and 28/10 added together gives you 18 8/10. You can see how there's less steps when you have to simplify there. Written as a decimal, 18.8 or 18 8/10 centimeters then would be the perimeter of this rectangle. Okay. Moving on. Now when we come to these number stories, we're going to kind of take everything we've just done and use that. All right. This first number story, we're not looking for the perimeter. Okay. And I know that because the very first thing I did was find that question mark. I know I've talked to you about that in previous lessons. Find that question mark. What is that number story really asking you to find out? Find out. How long is the line segment now? So obviously something happened to the line segment in this number story, and they want to know the length of it now. So let's go back and look at our clues here. We know Deja, I'm going to highlight that. And you know what, Mrs. Cole, I always tell my kids, how could I have skipped the directions? Read at the top. Solve the number story. Write, highlight that word, your answer as a decimal. So I cannot write my answer as a fraction. It needs to be written down here as a decimal in the end. And I do have to show how I found my answer. In other words, show your work. So let's look back here. We know it's asking how long the line segment is now. We know Deja draws a line segment. I boxed my key number 6.5 or 6 5/10. And that line segment we know is 6 5/10 centimeters long. Then she makes the line segment 2.7 or 2 7/10 centimeters longer. If I set up my T-chart, if that's a strategy you use, then I would start by first looking at What was that question asking again? Again, it's asking how long is the line segment now? What clues do we know to help us solve the problem? We know that Deja here drew a line segment that was 6 and 5/10 centimeters long, or 6 whole centimeters and 5/10 of another centimeters long. Then she went and made it 2.7 centimeters longer, or 2 whole centimeters and 7/10 of a centimeters longer. So then I need to think about my work. How could I do my work? Well, here I know 6.5 or 6 and 5/10 can be written like 6 wholes and 5/10. And I know if she made it longer, she added onto it. So I'm going to add 6 and 5/10 plus 2 and 7/10. So if I add the whole numbers first, 6 plus 2 gives me 8. And 5/10 plus 7/10 gives me a total of 12/10. 12/10. 12 over 10. Is there another whole? Yeah, because 12/10 here is equal to 1 whole centimeter then and 2 more tenths of a centimeter. So I take that 8 centimeters, because 6 plus 2 was 8, plus 1 and 2/10 centimeters, since I know that 12/10 is equal to that, and I get 9 and 2/10. 9 and 2/10 written as a decimal is 9.2. So what is my answer? Well, the line segment, if I have a complete answer, the line segment is now 9.2 centimeters long. What I really did here was I just took that 6.5 centimeters here, and I thought, okay, that's 6 and 5/10 plus 2 and 7/10. I got 8 and 12/10. All right, if I thought about that as written as a fraction, 8, or a mixed number, excuse me, 8, and then you'd have 12/10. And that's why when you see this here, I was thinking, okay, 12/10, how can I simplify that? Well, really, it's another whole and 2 more tenths left over. That's where I did that 8 plus 1 and got the 9. And then I had the 2/10 left over. So my answer of 9 and 2/10 is what I ended up with. And then I remembered that we needed to write as a decimal. Here's where I've shown my work. So make sure when you go to do yours, you're showing your work and then you're writing your answer as a decimal. Don't forget to look back too at the different strategies if you come across a number story looking at decimals and perimeter and the different strategies that you could use to then solve it. Okay, even go back to here if you need to help you change from a decimal to a fraction to solve the number story, and then change back since you have to write your answer as a decimal. Okay, so we have that work there. This is that time. If you're still with me, thank you. This video and this lesson is just about done. And if you've watched all the way to this point and you see the image above, then please go comment on today's assignment by writing who is in the picture. There's a person, that's all you need. If you know the animal's name that's with him, that's even better bonus there, but at least just who that character is in that picture, and you might just earn yourself a small surprise from your teacher or a bonus point of some sort. To finish up today's lesson here, just remember during this video we actually solved number 1 and on page 292. All you need to do, if I go scroll back to the top here, is now go onto the Google form and solve number 2 and 3 on page 92 on that Math 520 Google form. Do your extra math, check it off in the Google form, click submit on that math form, and you are all done math for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.